best of both worlds. Nobody talks about that.
Nobody talks about this shit.
Nobody talks about that project.
That's smooth under the rug.
Why?
Today in a New York federal courtroom, Sean Diddy Combs told the judge he was, quote, a little nervous. The rap mogul's criminal trial began this morning. He is trafficking, racketeering.
This trial is shaping up to be one of the most explosive legal dramas we've seen in years. Sean Diddy Combs, a man who once stood as an untouchable titan of the music industry, is now facing accusations that could tear apart not just his career, but his entire legacy. And just when you thought it couldn't get any more chaotic, the prosecution's star witness, yes, the one holding the most damning testimony, has mysteriously vanished. Mysteriously, or maybe not so mysteriously, depending on how you look at it. Because if you ask Jaguar Wright, the outspoken singer and self-proclaimed whistleblower, this disappearance reeks of something far more sinister. She's pointing the finger directly at Diddy, claiming he orchestrated this behind-the-scenes power move. And honestly, given what we already know about this case or theory, doesn't sound so far-fetched.
One other quick thing. They can't find witness number 3 still. This is apparently an ex-girlfriend of Diddy's who was one of the alleged victims. And prosecution can't find her.
Let's rewind a bit. This trial, which is already being called one of the messiest celebrity scandals in modern history, kicked off with bombshell allegations that left jaws on the floor. The charges against Diddy don't just scratch the surface. They dig deep into allegations of manipulation, intimidation, and a pattern of behavior that prosecutors argue is as calculated as it was horrifying. But the real shocker came when federal prosecutors announced that one of their key witnesses, referred to as Victim 3 in the indictment, couldn't be found. Not only has she gone completely off the radar, but her attorney is also unreachable. It's like she's disappeared into thin air at the worst possible moment. Now here's where things get even more twisted. Just weeks ago, Victim 3 had reportedly agreed to testify under her real name, a decision that would have stripped away the anonymity she'd been granted throughout the investigation. This was supposed to be the moment where she stepped into the spotlight, ready to expose what prosecutors claim are explosive and deeply personal details about her interactions with Diddy. And yet, right on the cusp of her big courtroom appearance, poof, she's gone. No one can find her, no one can reach her. And suddenly the prosecution's case is looking a whole lot shakier than it did just days ago.
A halfway intelligent person, when do you start questioning how lucky some keep getting?
Right. The Jaguar Wright, never want to hold back, has come forward to allege that this wasn't some random disappearing act. According to her, Diddy and his network of loyalists are behind this. She claims they got a Victim 3 silencing her in the most dramatic way possible to prevent her from testifying. And let's face it, when you consider the stakes, here it's not hard to see why people are taking her accusations seriously. If Victim 3's testimony is as damning as prosecutors suggest, it could spell the end for Diddy, both legally and reputationally. So if you were in his shoes, facing life behind bars, your empire crumbling around you, how far would you go to make sure that testimony never sees the light of day? But here's where it gets even spicier. Fans and internet sleuths are buzzing with speculation about who Victim 3 might be. Some believe it could be Gina, who, a woman who has had a long and complicated history with Diddy. Gina, who once seemed poised to join the ranks of Diddy's inner circle, has been outspoken about the way he treated her. She's alleged everything from emotional manipulation to situations that left her feeling completely powerless. And here's the kicker. Gina's social media has gone eerily silent. No posts, no updates, nothing. It's like she's vanished off the face of the earth, adding fuel to the fire of speculation that she might be the missing witness.
Full lawsuit. Cassie said that she was the victim of abuse, assault, and at the hands of Diddy.
Gina's story, as she truly is Victim 3, aligns almost perfectly with the allegations laid out in the indictment. She's spoken publicly about how she felt controlled and demeaned during her time with Diddy. In one particularly gut-wrenching interview, she revealed that she became pregnant by him not once, but twice, only to be pressured into making decisions she didn't want to make. She even claimed he offered her a hefty sum of money to make those decisions, but according to her, she refused because she wanted to prove she wasn't just in it for financial gain. She wanted respect, decency, something she says she never got. And then, of course, there's the infamous drama between Gina and Young Miami. One of Diddy's more recent flames, the two women have sparred, publicly trading barbs on social media in a series of exchanges that painted a picture of a deeply toxic and competitive dynamic. At one point, Miami even accused Gina of being little more than an accessory to Diddy's whim, someone he could call on when it suited him. The insults flew, the tweets were relentless, and the whole thing played out like a soap opera that no one could stop watching But now with Gina possibly being the missing witness, those petty squabbles take on a much darker tone. Were they just catfights, or were they symptoms of something far more sinister going on behind scenes?
Defense wanted to propose a question on, after the potential jurors filled out their questionnaire, have they seen any news media, any documentaries, anything just relating to a news medium, and whether or not they saw it in between them filling out the questionnaire to Monday morning when they saw, or when they go to.
Let's not forget the allegations against Diddy paint a picture of someone who uses immense power and influence to control everyone in his orbit. Prosecutors have described him as a man who manipulated and intimidated women, leveraging his wealth and status to bend them to his. Well, they've even claimed that some of the activities he orchestrated were meticulously planned down to the smallest details, and that they were often recorded for his own purposes. If these accusations are true, then whose? To say he wouldn't go to extreme lengths to protect himself now that the walls are closing in, but Jaguar Wright's claims take it a step further. She's not just saying Diddy silenced victim 3. She's saying he orchestrated a full-blown operation to ensure she wouldn't testify. According to Jaguar, the timing of this disappearance is no coincidence. Victim 3 vanishes just as jury selection wraps up, just as opening statements are set to begin, and just as the courtroom is preparing to hear what could be the most damning testimony of the entire trial. It's almost too perfect, too calculated, and Jaguar is convinced that the truth, when it finally comes out, will be even more shocking than what we've already seen.
Because we now know who all the prosecutors will be on Diddy's trial. They're all women. They have assembled a team of female prosecutors, and that is definitely not.
But let's not forget, this isn't just about one witness. This trial has already dragged in a laundry list of high-profile names, from actors like Michael B. Jordan to music industry power players like Cassie Ventura. The revelations coming out of this case are peeling back the curtain on a world most of us could only imagine, a world of immense privilege, unchecked power, and the kind of behind-the-scenes dealings that would make even the most jaded Hollywood insider raise an eyebrow. And with victim 3's disappearance, the stakes have never been higher. What secrets was she planning to reveal? What evidence might have backed up her claims? And most importantly, who benefits the most from her silence? As the trial continues, all eyes are on Diddy and his legal team. Will they use this sudden twist to their advantage, arguing that the prosecution's case has been irreparably weakened, or will the feds manage to recover from this and press forward? With the remaining witnesses, one thing for sure: this story is far from over, and with every passing day it's becoming clearer that the truth might be even darker than anyone expected.
This investigation is ongoing, and I encourage anyone with information about this case to come forward and to do it quickly.
And just when you think the flames couldn't possibly burn any higher, they suddenly leap to new heights, because what's happened behind the scenes of this trial isn't just a legal battle. It's a chessboard where every move is calculated, every piece is positioned for maximum impact. And right now the prosecution is scrambling. Without victim 3, their case is teetering on the edge. But here's where things get even more chaotic. The whispers of who might be pulling the strings behind her disappearance are growing louder, and the implications are sending shockwaves through Hollywood's elite. Let's talk about the power dynamics at play here. Diddy isn't just a celebrity. He's a man who has spent decades building an empire that stretches far beyond music. His influence is woven into the fabric of entertainment, fashion, and even business. This is a man who has positioned himself as untouchable, a kingpin, a culture who knows how to wield his wealth and connections like a weapon. And the idea that someone with that much reach could manipulate the very foundation of a federal trial, it's not just plausible, it's chilling.
Out to the latest on the arrest of Sean Diddy Combs. This one has so many people talking. The disgraced music mogul facing federal racketeering, conspiracy, and sex trafficking charges. Both the prosecution and defense teams are set to discuss the next phase of action following the indictment, as investigators work to determine potential co-conspirators. But how exactly did we get?
Behind closed door, sources are saying that the defense is ready to pounce on the prosecution's weakened position. They're already arguing that without victim 3, the case lacks the cohesive narrative it needs to sway a jury. They're painting this as a witch hunt, a desperate attempt to bring down a successful man by dredging up old allegations and turning them into something more sinister. And if they can convince even a single juror that this is all smoke and mirrors, Diddy could walk away from this completely unscathed. But here's the kicker: the prosecution isn't backing down. They're doubling down, pushing forward with their remaining witnesses. and leaning heavily on a mountain of evidence that they claim paints a damning picture of Diddy's behavior. And some of that evidence, it's reportedly so explosive that it could redefine how the public sees not just Diddy, but the entire entertainment industry. Think incriminating recordings, receipts that trace back to some of the most infamous allegations and testimony that could blow the lid off what really happened behind the velvet rope.
There's the plea offer that came up in the last hearing where the government said we did offer him a deal or an offer, I should say, and that he rejected it. And now it's official, and he said it to the court as well, too. You know, he stood up, said that he consulted with this about his attorneys, and it seems like they're planning, or not even seems like they're rolling the dice by.
And yet the shadow of victim 3 looms large. What did she know that made her testimony so critical? What secrets was she about to reveal that could have tipped the scales entirely? And perhaps most importantly, who stands to gain the most from her silence? Because let's be clear, this isn't just about Diddy. This is about a web of people who have benefited from his power, who have stayed in his orbit, because it was safer than stepping out of. If victim 3 had the key to unraveling that web, then her disappearance isn't just a coincidence. It's a calculated move in a game where the stakes couldn't be higher. And speaking of calculated moves, let's not forget the other players in this drama. Cassie Ventura, Diddy's former partner, and one of the most vocal accusers, has already settled her lawsuit. But her presence in this trial remains a lightning rod. Her allegations are central to case, and the defense is expected to come at her with everything they've got. They're already hinting that they'll frame her as someone who is bitter, someone who has an agenda, someone who can't be trusted. It's a classic strategy: discredit the accuser to distract from the accusations. But will it work, or will her testimony be the anchor that keeps the prosecution afloat?
Again, the judge kind of made this a point too, talking about, okay, well, if we're going to continue to do sidebars each and every single time that a prospective juror has to talk about a sensitive topic, that could take up a lot of time. But again, the defense and the government both seem pretty confident that they'll still be able to kind of get it going at a quick pace. This isn't unusual to do in these types of high profile cases. So that was pretty much just the topics about, Ghislaine Maxwell.
Cassie might be the most high profile name attached to this case, but she's far from the only one. Over the years, a disturbing string of lawsuits has been filed against Diddy, painting a pattern that prosecutors are likely to emphasize. One of the most shocking came from a former videographer who worked closely with him. This person claimed that Diddy not only fostered a toxic environment, but also coerced his employees into participating in actions they were deeply uncomfortable with. The lawsuit alleged that Diddy's control extended far beyond professional boundaries, creating a work atmosphere that was more like a pressure cooker of manipulation and fear. And the details, let's just say, they're the kind of thing that makes you question how this stayed under wraps for so long. Then there's the case of former fashion industry worker who accused Diddy of orchestrating a scenario that left her traumatized for years. Her allegations were buried in the noise of other Hollywood scandals at the time, but now they're resurfacing with a vengeance. According to her claim, she was lured into a circle with the promise of career opportunities, only to find herself in situations where saying no didn't feel like an option. And here's the kicker: her lawsuit mentioned others who allegedly witnessed what happened, but chose to stay silent. These secondary names might not be in the courtroom right now, but their presence lingers in the background. A whisper of just how many people might have known what was going on and chose to look the other way.
Just to tell the truth, so hopefully we can get down to the bottom of this. I'm 100%, the charges against me are 100% false, and hopefully due to time, we'll start this.
And let's not forget the allegations from a woman who worked as part of a yacht crew during an exclusive event Diddy hosted. She claimed that what started as a glamorous opportunity turned into an experience. She would rather forget her lawsuit, which is still pending, accuses Diddy of behavior that crossed every conceivable line of professionalism. And the details of this case, they're supposedly tied to events that also involved other prominent figures, which raises even more questions. Who else knew? Who else was there? And why is it that only now, after years of whispers and rumors, these stories are finally coming to light? And then there's the question of what other evidence might surface. Rumors are swirling that the federal raids on Diddy's properties yielded more than just a headline suggested. Confidential documents, private communications, and even alleged recordings are all said to be in the government's possession. If any of that makes its way into the courtroom, it could be a game share. But here's the thing: it could also backfire, because if the defense can argue that this evidence was obtained improperly or that it's being taken out of context, it could muddy the waters enough to create reasonable doubt.
Very significant, just from who we associate Diddy been and everything we've seen him do over the decades? Like you said, this is quite the downfall to go from, I mean, we saw the mansions back in March that were raided by the feds. So to go from living in those mansions to being in a jail cell right now, I think it really underscores the magnitude of what he's facing and the weight of the feds.
And let's not ignore the ripple effects this trial is already having on the industry. Hollywood is known for its scandals, but this is something else entirely. High-profile names are being dragged into the narrative, and the fear of what might come out next is palpable. Executives, artists, and influencers who have long been tied to Diddy are reportedly scrambling to distance themselves, deleting old photos, scrubbing their social media, and issuing vague statements about respecting the legal process. But let's be real, this isn't about respect, it's about survival. Because if this trial reveals a pattern of complicity, the fallout could be catastrophic. And yet through all of this, one question remains: what happens if Diddy walks away from this unscathed? What message does that send his accusers to the industry and to the public? Because let's not forget, this isn't just about one man. This is about a system that has allowed people like him to thrive, a system that has turned a blind eye to allegations for the sake of profit and power. If Diddy walks, it's not just a win for him, it's a win for every person who has ever used their influence to silence their critics. And that's a reality that's too horrifying to contemplate.
It's a question of that, but when you read through the indictment, it's pretty clear who could be indicted as a co-conspirator. Right now, there are people in the indictment who would be considered unnamed co-conspirators, but clearly have played a role in this conspiracy. And I think prosecutors have some big leverage on them because they're hoping that they testify against Diddy as prosecution.
So what happens next? Will the prosecution manage to recover from the loss of victim 3? Will the remaining witnesses hold the line? Or will the defense tear their credibility apart? And most importantly, will this trial finally bring the truth to light? Or will it become just another chapter in a story that's been playing out for far too long? Let us know what you think down below, because this is far from over. Stay tuned, and we'll see you in the next one.